talk is going to be about MITRE framework and the kind of attacks that we are seeing right now, and primarily coming from our adversary nations, including Pakistan, China, and the West. So this talk is about how an asymmetric attribution is playing with our lives. So all of us, first, let's talk more on to why we joined cybersecurity, what intrigued us into joining cybersecurity directly. So primarily nobody wanted to be a defender. I believe everybody who joined cybersecurity wanted to be a hacker, right? But then we found out that there are bigger problems to solve, which is that hacking is so prevalent nowadays that defending against them is also a challenging thing. And then we switch on our mindset as a defender and we start writing detection rules, we start writing programs that would detect advanced threats. That is how we all are transitioning, right? But then what is inherently missing while we are doing that transition is that we might be relying on frameworks, we might be relying on the knowledge base that might have been created by an adversary. Though this talk is all about MITRE, I want to ask a very basic question that how many of you have heard about MITRE? And I'm not talking about MITRE attack or defense. I'm just talking about an organization whose name is MITRE. Yes, please.
I've heard about MITRE. So MITRE is an organization that it is basically a list of hacking techniques that are used.
No, MITRE has nothing to do with cyber. That is one.
MITRE dating and
No, I'm not talking about MITRE attack or defense. It is just heads up that what MITRE is. Let's just start with that. MITRE attack, we got to know because we are in cybersecurity, right? MITRE defense because we are also into the defense and cyber. But what MITRE is? So MITRE basically is a think tank that is funded with World War II. Okay? So we will start with that. So we have studied about MITRE, we have studied about defense, but that defense is coming from a nation that has conducted one of the biggest war in this world. I'm not saying on like it is on the terms of geopolitics. I'm saying it from the factual point that okay, these are the warfare predicting or conducting bodies, and they have a specific mandate. So they are not running on free money, right? They need to be objectifiable. They need to have a quotient wherein they can drive the next generation market. And that is wherein there was a brain that got open that was called as MITRE attack in 2013. We'll get into that, like why it was incorporated and what was the reason behind that. But let me ask you another question. How many of us know that there are advanced persistent attackers, there are groups that are funded by government to penetrate or infiltrate adversaries' critical infrastructure? How many of us are aware? You guys don't seem to be interested, or whether you guys are not much more into this. Don't you guys think that there are hackers working for governments and hacking into our government, right? Don't you guys think that? Anybody not raising any hand here? I'm a little surprised. But why is that we believe that this world is working on a peace model? There are hackers all around the world. They have been mandated by government organizations to make use of their skills so that it could be utilized for changing the dynamics of the inner workings of any government or any body. So there is a particular group called advanced persistent attackers. These are the groups, or these are the well-funded groups by the nations. Their work is primarily to infiltrate and try to go for a very precise objective. So, for example, they might be getting a mandate to hack into our power utilities, or to hack into our medical development, could be any critical infrastructure.
talking about nation state actors.
Yes, I'm talking about nation state actors from past 5 months, 5 minutes. So, yes, exactly, the nation state actors. So, do you think that there are ABD groups that are beyond that are documented? Because once we say that nation state actor, we refer to MITRE, we go for that reference that okay, if MITRE says that okay, there are 69 ABD groups, from 1 to 10 there were Chinese threat actors, then we have ABD 28, 29 from Russia, then we have 36, 34, 35, 42, like that. And then we have Finns, which are financially motivated threat actors. But do you think that this list is absolutely accurate and complete? That there are groups that are not attributed, right? So this is the whole ideation behind this talk that I'm going to deliver. So MITRE attack won in 2013. So there's a experimentation group FMX that has a joint venture between NSA and US Cyber Command. They have developed this MITRE attack that we are right now following happily. And they have come up with a framework on by 2019. They come up with all the techniques that they thought that okay, these were the documented techniques on how we got targeted. And let us publish that so that our adversaries know that we know that how they are getting into our infrastructure. But what was the missing part? Anybody? What was the missing puzzle? US told that okay, we have been targeted by these many threat actors and these were the techniques how we got targeted or NATO got targeted, for example. But what is the missing element, guys? Anybody?
How they target other countries and
Yes, that's all of the puzzle, right? There is no other different organization that talks about threat actors that are non-NATO, right? Like any threat actor that is targeting non-NATO nations, they are MITRE is least concerned on that. So primarily, brief introduction about myself now. My name is Nitish Srivastava. I've been into offensive cybersecurity for more than a decade now. Officially, 8 to 10 years I've been doing that. We developed India's first reach and attack simulation platform. We also are the founder of Bring Your Own Reputation-based attack, which is kind of a NATO-based attack that US does to other nations. We demystified that particular attack. This is called as Bring Your Own Reputation. It is a global smart screen bypass. If you guys know, you cannot download a particular exe if it is not signed from malware with an exe that you have just written. It would not work in a real world challenge because you might not be able to download that because your browser says that okay, it is insecure. Right? There is an inherent bypass on that. This is how US or other advanced nations hack us without knowing us and without helping us to know that how to identify or come against them. So Bring Your Own Reputation bypass is still unpatched. Microsoft knows this particular vulnerability for around 2.5 years. They still are not patching this particular vulnerability because if they patch this particular vulnerability, they will patch their 80 sources. So the mission statement is building systems to build a safer digital world. And when I'm saying better, safer digital world, it also includes non-NATO countries. So definitely it should not rely on biased frameworks such as MITRE. Okay, so this pictorial representation speaks a lot about it. So we have from Iran, we have ABD 33, from China we have Soy Typhoon, Boy Typhoon, from North Korea we have Lazarus, from Russia we have ABD 28, 29, right? But what about the rest part? Anybody, I challenge, I'll give you 1 lakh rupees if you can. Right away, I'll send you away. If you can name 3 US APPs. Yes.
I can name one. I'm not sure if it's an APP, but it's AAO, it's a subset of.
No, that's an organization. TAWA, right? Internet Access Operations, right? No, that's an organization. I'm talking about APTs. Yeah, you're Russian. And that too, because they're an intelligence agency, not a cyber operation unit. Anybody? Even if you ask Google, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, you're not finding. There is no data, right? There is no APT that US has. There is no reference to that. There is no area that detects US-based APTs. So that is how the area vendor coming from West fool us precisely. You will not get a detection which is coming from US-based APT because they don't have nothing around that. It is as simple as possible. Okay. So the Western vendors, for example, Microsoft, Mendiant, right, they do not report anything that US is going to report. Because if they do that, the repercussions would be similar to what we are seeing in our trade negotiations, right? Heavy duties, a lot of things. So they are not going to restrict for their own business. What kind of software they are using? I am using Mac, right? Everybody is using like Windows, Mac, or something that is coming from the US, of course. And the software that we are using, of course, is also less dependent. They are not going to shut their business off because they want to save our critical infrastructure, of course. Okay. So with that, this talk is going to be based on the case study. I'll be very brief because the idea, the school of thought that I wanted to project here, I think everybody in this room is already aware about it. How we are trusting our adversaries, how we are keeping them close to our chest, whom they are going to bite. Okay. So this particular group, they have started, so this is the nation state actor group. They started around 2001. The discovery time, so when they got attributed by Casper Skylab, was 14 years. They operated silently till 2015. 14 years of poor R&D, 14 years of millions of dollars getting funded to create what? To create capabilities that are not detected, the capabilities that could not be removed, and they are going to stay for quite some time. These capabilities were targeting hardware, firmware, right? The companies that you can see, Seagate, WD, Toshiba, Samsung. The capabilities that they built at that time, and some say that it was also them building capabilities for sustenance because they have also chained 4 distinctive 0 days so that it could work. At that time, very few organizations had those capabilities to build 4 0 days, right? Like as if we talk today, getting 4 0 days, chaining 4 0 days to work as an expert today also is a challenge. Just imagine if we are talking about 2021. So with that, what was their whole ideation? They were working on supply chain back in like 2001. They were building, they were getting inside of the framework, the firmware, they were puncturing those systems that are really harder to detect. And the ideation behind that was that they should go along with their government narratives, their national security demands for as long as possible and as early as possible. So this particular group, I would request you guys to study about it. There is very little to no information till the point when Shadow Broker actually released a lot of information, and then people got to know that their capabilities and what kind of code they were doing. So definitely refer this particular guide. Okay, now this particular operation, so how we study an adversary. So according to Chanakya, it is said that if you want to study an adversary, befriend an adversary of that particular adversary. So for example, if I have to study Pakistan, right? Pakistan knows that we are on ground that we are not going to share intelligence, right? But what if we look for example, just giving a heads up, geopolitics is much more complex than what I'm saying. But let's say that I want to study Pakistan, what I can do is I can engage Afghanistan. And we can ask Afghanistan to do something, and then we can correlate that information, and we can try we then try to understand what Pakistan thinks about India, because to them India is a bigger adversary, and to them Afghanistan might not be that of a hurdle. So ideation is that how I try to go for US is that let's try to see how US is targeting China. China is a long-term friend and adversary both. So how US is targeting China is similar. It would be something sort of a similar operation that they might also be doing on us, right? China, they have developed their Great Firewall of China, right? GFW, back in 2008, and now it has come to an advanced stages wherein they have their own internet. They don't access Google as we do. They don't access our YouTube as we do. They don't have Instagram, so they still save their 8 to 10 hours. And we waste our 8 to 10 hours into a program that was just created to understand huge demographics. So this particular incident that we are referring here is the target was Northwest Polytechnical University. So particularly you can think of this university as Power Atomic Research Center or Advanced Research Centers of India, but it is situated in China, and the kind of research that were done in this particular university, it was related to aerospace design. How US targeted this particular university, they started with phishing, and there were different, like they utilized 54 jump servers in 17 countries wherein their traffic was hopping, so that there is less or no attribution to their own original servers. 70% of their infrastructure was hosted within the country. It means that the traffic was not going beyond a particular boundary. So we need to understand like how they are operating. So they are not hacking China by routing their traffic outside China. They are hacking China by staying inside China. While you are hunting their footprints outside China, they are inside China doing their thing. And that's it. So what kind of offset failures they did, how we got to know that it is US, right? I mean to say that how China found that US was behind such targets. Obviously they were also human, and at that time AI was not prevalent and AGI was not a thing into cyber operations. So activity was restricted to US timelines, time zones like 8 to 5. And then there was zero activities during holidays. For example, on Christmas there was no hacking activity as such. So such attributions were there, and that is how they were attributed. But right now, with advancements of offensive capabilities along with LLMs, it has taken a different turn now. Okay, so now talking about 2010 to 2013 Stuxnet, where the physical destruction was has happened similar to what I just demonstrated how future SCADA systems could be manipulated, and it will have a disastrous or a kinetic result. This is something that used to happen. These were the activities that used to happen back in 2010, 2013. But now there are counterintelligence operations. There are other attacks that once, so for example, US attacked China. China gathered few intelligence about US, and now it's turn for China to attack US. These are like counterintelligence operations that happens, and now attributions are getting blurred. The line of attributions are really hard to draw. And these are the wide relationships. So, for example, if you are hacking into other nations will definitely hack into us. Now, talking about the sequence. So, these are few activities. So, if I say, so this particular slide is about how you can still hack any of the particular Windows system, no matter which area is there, which kind of detections are there, and how you can do that is particularly shown here. And this is something that actually threat actors utilize. This is part of MITRE. So MITRE has different blocks, starting from the reconnaissance, how you do reconnaissance, and then taking into initial access, privilege escalation, situational awareness, destruction of evidences and all evidences as well as targets. So it has different variations on the MITRE attack framework. So this particular sequence vulnerability, it got introduced in Black Hat around 2019. But since we know that MITRE is a framework that is definitely utilized on non-NATO countries as well, can you guess if this particular vulnerability, which is like you don't have to download any particular malware to run it within the system, you can directly click on few buttons and your system will be compromised. This attack was displayed to the world back in 2019. MITRE was fully operational. Everybody knew what is happening. If I ask a random guess, by when we think this particular vulnerability, which is so exploitable, should be added to MITRE framework? What should be the lapse? Like after 3 months, it should have gone introduced into the MITRE framework. After 6 months, after a year, random guess, guys. And you would just randomly say what is the supposed timeline you guys think that if some lethal initial access vectors or compromising malware comes into picture, what is the timeline that it should be added to a framework?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible, right? It got added by 2025.
Why it took that much time?
Because if they patch this particular vulnerability, if they tell that this particular vulnerability exists, they'll have to develop new technologies to attack non-NATO countries. It took them almost 5 to 6 years to get this particular vulnerability attached to their framework. And this is by design Microsoft vulnerabilities. Microsoft cannot do anything about it. These are still happening, but it is that pushing it to a limelight was not something that they wanted to do. It took them around 4 years. So we can definitely look into the kind of intentions that they have around these directions. Okay, now this particular fix, this is again something that that is getting introduced by a lot of threat actors. This is simply a way wherein so right now the technique is to utilize vectors that do not rely upon user downloading a particular app, because now we are too much aware that okay, we should not download a particular exe, R, document, whatnot, because these could carry malwares. Now attackers are shifting their focus and getting into a download-less kind of methodologies. What we have seen in ClickOnce, this was downloadless. You don't have to download anything. You can directly run it from your browser. Similarly, ClickOnce, it displays your particular page. It says that okay, now your clipboard has this particular command. You want to update your software. You want to upgrade your operating system. Just put a Windows R, which will prompt you the run command, like Windows run. And then once you drop in a control plus V, it will paste this particular command that was induced into your clipboard. And then once you hit an enter, it will start executing and giving its command control access. It's the system command, system access to command and control server. So these are the kind of evasion techniques that right now the threat actors are using. Now you can, so this slide also talks about such techniques. So you can take a screenshot of this and then study it later. But these are the actual techniques that are right now alive and is getting utilized by actual red teams also and by threat actors also. Now, let's come to the real part of red teaming and real part of cyber operations. Huawei Strike and any other public tool that we know of, they have inherent detection points. They know that anything that is public or getting utilized by masses will have detections. What right now is happening, that there are PDR companies that are making their business on detecting those that are public. So they are exactly detecting the tool, not the technique. There is a difference, right? Detection that is coming from tool and not from the technique itself says that there is a gap. So anything that is public, they are able to capture that. But anything that is non-public or custom, they don't have anything to say on that. There is no detection whatsoever. So the kind of detection right now that we are seeing. So for example, if you start working on Splunk or ALK, the first thing that you'll be introduced to is that okay, start writing detection based MITRE detect, MITRE defend. right? But the thing is, the rules that you're going to gather and the kind of detection that you're going to apply, since MITRE different is also based on the tools that are already in public domain or are already signatured, you'll be writing those codes that are already there, the techniques that are already there. You're not going to do anything, any sort of research beyond that. Because we have been given a particular baseline that okay, this is something that MITRE difference is. This is something that these tools are formed on, and we know how to detect it. Just write rules around that. Every behavioral analysis that we do is based on that. All the tools that we are seeing right now, be it Covalistine, be it Havoc, be it Metasploit, be it any tools that we are using, they are not going to work in real world because there are detections around that. But now, since the cyber operations are happening, and they also know that okay, when you do go custom, you can. So there is a shift that is happening that people are right now working on custom developing tools. The detection is now coming to a different level. Detection is not that easy right now because no US APT, no Chinese APT, no Pakistani APT, no other APTs that are not getting detected and are off MITRE chart is not using such public tools. They are not getting detected by these DDS, of course. They are utilizing their custom tools, they are utilizing their custom experts. Definitely it is time taking. But yes, the payout is that they are going to remain anonymous while they speak and for much later years. So, all the custom command and control servers, custom persistent method, custom loaders are something that are working right now. Okay, so let's suppose back in 2001, US had Tau, US had a particular team working on cyber operations. Now India has to build its own because it is of course a need of the hour because we are constantly getting targeted by our adversaries and we just cannot rely on the defenses based on which is on basis of MITRE defend or attack. Because we know that these are blind frameworks, they are not going to help us when we actually need their help. So the push would be to actually develop our custom tools, custom offensive cybersecurity tools, infrastructure that could be agile, supportive, as well as we have to come up with detection tools that are beyond MITRE defend or attack. Detection tools that we are writing based upon our attacks, based upon our analysis of our attacks. So for example, if there is a particular malware sample that we have received just recently for example, Atomic Research Center, utilize that particular malware sample to derive IOC that are not known. Utilize that particular IOC to kind of create detection tools that are beyond what we are seeing right now. If we can do that, if we can attribute that into a way that is non-virus totalish or non-Hydra based, we could definitely develop some sort of way to actually detect advanced malware. If we are still relying on Hydra or if we are still relying on virus totals to say that okay, we are malicious or not, the doomsday is probably near. Okay, so that was the whole idea behind this talk, that it is a food of thought that whatever tools that we are utilizing, whatever feature that we have developed, whatever capability that we are talking about, these are on basis of an asymmetric attribution. It is coming from a lobby that works for their nation, not us. That works, the differences are definitely not for us to directly absorb.